Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. So I know it's been a while since I've put anything out. Life's been crazy. This new command has just been driving me up a fucking wall. But anyways, I actually have found somebody else that's interested in podcasting, and I've been talking for a while that I would like more people to come on, and it looks like I'm probably going to have a consistent co-host now. So I'm going to throw it over to him, let him talk about himself a little bit, and then we'll jump into today's topic.
Hey, how y'all doing? So, I'm also Master at Arms, second class, wanting to look into getting into podcasting. And I guess we'll just hop right into today's topic. So, we're going to be talking about Captain's Mast from the E6 and below standpoint, as far as how things go when that happens and what we've witnessed and seen.
So we'll talk about that. This is our first kind of test run with this. We may hit this topic again later. We've got some stuff in mind, but it really, this is just going to be us kind of rambling on about kind of our experiences and the things that we've seen. So we'll see what happens. So I'm glad you came on, man. I'm happy to have a co-host. I've been for a while. I know you haven't really listened to much of the stuff that I've put out, but I talk about all the time that I want more people to come on and get more involved, because that's the whole point. It's like I'm trying to build a community, so it's nice to have somebody else to talk to that's going to be consistent. Because I don't know. I haven't really got much interaction.
Yeah, I would like to see a group of people more enlisted, preferably for what I've heard about the podcast being below the khaki level. I think would be nice. I mean, I it's your channel, but I would like to hear the more of the khaki level as well. So yeah, I would like to see that some of our buddies and people that you know, people that I know, I think it'd be nice to see more of a group, a hangout type situation.
Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, I'm looking for all branches, man, because like it'd be cool to see the different point of view. I mean, it's literally in the name, the enlisted point of view, right? And so to have somebody on from something different to like compare our experiences.
There's a Coast Guard guy that I was telling you about. I think he would be great on a podcast.
Yeah, I mean that'd be awesome. We set that up one day. Anyway, so the topic, talking about Captain's Mast, other forms of punishment, shit like that goes on in the Navy, and like the differences. There is a vast difference of how not only from just like E1, E2, E3, E4 up to probably E6, the difference between that and a chief, but also the difference between that and an officer. And yeah, I know, like, at any point in time, an officer can basically put in their resignation and be like, yeah, no, I'm done. And, they lose a lot of shit. But like, the difference in the way that works, it's just crazy. Let's talk about some of your stuff. I know I've done bailiff a few times for a Captain's Mast. I've done, what do they call it, brig chaser. I've done a few different things where I've been involved with different cases. But, like, what's some of the stuff that you've seen?
Stuff that sticks out, I guess, that's common that you see in a lot of cases, or almost every case, is the CO will bring, once you get to that part, after you go through DRB, XOI, I've even seen it in XOI, but the CO will bring the chain of command in first, at least where I was at when I was bailiffing. And they ask them about the sailor that's about to get punished, and it's like, oh, he's a piece of shit, he's this, he shows up late all the time, he does this, he does that, shouldn't be in the Navy, this, that, and the third. And then when they bring the sailor in and they go through their process, either before they get awarded or after, usually I've seen it before, but they ask, tell me about your sailor right in front of them. Well, then it's, he's progressing, or she. They try hard. They do this. And it's like, when they're in front of their sailor, who's E3, E4, whoever, it's like they're more scared of them than telling
The skipper.
CO the truth.
Yeah, that's interesting though. That like whenever so everybody's set up. Let's roll back for a second here. So the way captain's masts work, right? Typically, 9 times out of 10, what's going to happen is the sailor gets in trouble. The sailor then goes to a board of chiefs, and they chew the sailor out, and they decide whether or not it should go up to the next level. If it goes up to the next level, it goes up to the XO. The XO sits down, talks with the sailor, probably chews his ass a little bit, and then it goes from there. The XO will decide whether or not they want to send him to captain's mast, and after that, it'll go to the captain. Now, captain's mast is it's called NJP, non-judicial punishment. It's Article 15 or the UCMJ. It's across all branches. Just in the Navy, we call it captain's mast. But so it gets to that point. It goes to the captain. Well, there's a legal process. They fill out all this paperwork, all this stuff. The day of mast, you go into the room and they'll have the chain of command typically lined up on one side. They'll have they'll have probably the judge advocate and some other people in there, and then the captain standing in the front at typically like a podium. And so the guys in there, the guy or girl, they're in their dress whites. They have to do like facing movements, all proper, military stuff. Come in, report, and then the captain like inspects their uniform, and then they get into talking. But what I find strange in your situation is that the chain of command was basically talking shit about the sailor before he came in. In my experience, most of the time, the captain waits until the sailor comes in, and then, like you said, he'll ask the chain of command, like, hey, does the chain of command have anything to say about the sailor before we proceed? So I found that weird that they were just kind of like talking shit about him, and then they were like, oh, well, wait a minute, he's here now.
Oh, it happened a lot. In most cases, they tell the truth or how they really feel in the beginning when it's just us and the CO and CMC in the room. And then once, the only thing that changes is the accused is in the room. And instead of telling their sailor how they actually feel about them, then they change the narrative, and they're like, oh, he's trying, or he needs some work, but he's this or that, and it's completely different. There's only, out of all the cases I did, probably 2 did the chain of command stick to how they really felt about somebody.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen the chain come in and actually like, hey, this is a good sailor, and he's yada yada yada. Where they actually like they're trying to help the guy out, but I've also seen the opposite end where they're like, not giving him good remarks, basically. Without calling him a shitbag, they're saying he's a shitbag. You know what I mean?
I've seen the this is a good sailor, and I've seen that stay true from each time they're asked.
Yeah.
But the majority of the cases has been, we're gonna shit all over this guy, when it's just us and the CO, with the bailiff and the other legal team in there. But then when he comes in and they're asked again, it's like, well, he's trying. He's a dirtbag completely.
Yeah.
So I've seen that. I've also seen chain of commands get called out for when they talk about how late or whatever somebody is. Basically, they don't have any paperwork to back it up. But it's one of those things, once it's put out, even though there's no paperwork to back it up, which is the correct way of doing it, they're still in a way kind of held accountable because the CO can't unhear it.
Yeah. So and that kind of brings us to a good point is when you go to NJP, when you go to captain's mast, there is no required evidence. So you can have, let's say that me and you got in a fight, and I really messed you up, right? And then we're good to go. We're whatever. We walk it off, and somebody else hears about it and they report it, and we go up. Me and you can both say, nope, nothing happened, we're good. But the CO can decide that, you know what, I don't care. You're still going to get, 45 days restriction or whatever. Or, that's kind of a weird case. But like you can have somebody can say, you know what, I saw Bob rob that store. Or I heard about Bob robbing that store. And there can be no physical evidence. There can be, we could search his place, not find anything. There could be basically everything pointing in the opposite direction of like, hey, This did not happen. Like, there's no proof of this. And the skipper can decide, you know what? It doesn't matter. This guy's standing here in front of me. I'm going to either kick him out, give him restriction, take his money, take his rank. At that point, he can do whatever the hell he wants.
Yeah. Another good example of that I was just told about the other day was in A school. And for those of y'all who don't know, A school is when you have a job, you go to boot camp, you get out of boot camp, you go to your school to get trained how to do your job. And they call it A school because it's your, basically your first school. Then if you go to another school, it's considered a C school. But in A school, these it's mixed between guys and girls, males and females. It's two different buildings, but they're near each other. But males aren't allowed in females' rooms, and females aren't allowed in males' rooms. Well, these two individuals were hooking up, and male and a female, they were on the male side, and the roommate knew about it. Well, when they got caught, the roommate just said, that doesn't have anything to do with me. I didn't know it was going on. Well, the two individuals that were committing the offense or breaking the rule, they decided to tell the truth, but they decided to tell more than just their truth and say, well, yes, he did know about it. Well, the guy that just basically got caught lying, saying, I didn't know about this, he got punished worse than the people that were actually breaking the rule. He got derated, which means he lost his job, got sent undesignated to the fleet, and the two individuals that were actually breaking the rules and sleeping together, they just got your basic like half month's pay. It was either for a month or two, I think some extra duty, and they got to keep their rate and go to the fleet with their job.
Yeah, and so I mean that kind of shows that like at the end of the day, the skipper decides what he wants to do.
Yeah, and that was just, he says he didn't know about it. You can't prove if he did or didn't.
Yeah.
And just because they said he knew about it, they took the people that were already breaking the rule in the wrong, they took their word for it and punished him.
Yeah. Yeah, and so like that's one thing that really bothers me about the system, right? So you go up and see the skipper, or as you know, a lot of people call him the old man. You go up, and anything can happen at that point. You can have the most convincing. You can bring evidence showing contrary to what the accusation is, and the skipper can go, "It doesn't matter," and I'm still going to charge you with this. But now, what I want to say though is, before it gets to this point, if you know you are going to captain's mast, unless you are on a ship, you can always request court-martial. And so at court-martial, they have to have proof. And if there's not enough proof, that shit gets thrown out. So my recommendation as an MA is, if it gets to that point where you know you're going to mast, fucking file and try to go to court-martial. Get a lawyer and get that shit nipped in the bud. Because, I mean, I don't want to say you can get off if you are guilty, but that is more like a real court system where the accuser has to provide proof.
Yeah, that is good advice. I would look into it as an option. Just be careful, because if it turns out that you really did do it and they catch you, the punishment is way worse.
Right.
So if you didn't do it, or you're being wrongly accused, yes, 100% request to go to court-martial. If the story can be twisted or turned or whatever the case may be careful at shooting right for that. Because, like I said, the punishment is worse than captain's mast. Which you mentioned something about, you can even bring proof to prove that you didn't do something, and they can still, choose to ignore it. A buddy of ours, that happened to somebody, and I've seen the evidence, or the non-evidence, lack thereof, if you will, of that case. And he somebody made a statement, and that person, he had text message proof that that person lied
Oh yeah, so they made
on their statement.
yeah, they made a false official statement, which in itself
Yeah.
is a charge.
And he showed it to the XO, and legal came back to him and said, he said that it's irrelevant, and that they just didn't even consider it, even though he had physical proof
Yeah.
saying that they wasn't truthful, and they still took that female statement and used it against him.
Yeah, which is part of the big problem that was getting on about, where the skipper basically can do whatever he wants, and honestly, that leads to another conversation that I would love to have at some point. Is we have an issue as MAs in the Navy, that we're supposed to be law enforcement, but everything reports to the fucking skipper. We need a provost marshal. We need actual military law enforcement jurisdiction, because right now, let's say the XO does something jacked up, but you know what? The XO and the CO, they're real fucking tight. CO is going to be like, yeah, no, don't worry about it. We're not going to fuck up his career over that. But yet, Junior Sailor Timmy, he does it, and whoo boy.
Well, and that brings, I won't mention the ship or the CO's name, but this is a real big point that I want to talk about when you asked me about examples earlier. So when I was on a carrier, the CO most days was coming in about, I don't know, 8:30, 9:30, which, okay, most people don't care or pay attention to it because it's a CO. They look at it like he can do whatever he wants. But for those of us that look out for certain things because it's our job, you start to wonder, well, why does he come in at sometimes as late as 10 o'clock? We'll come to find out, this CO is punishing people for DUIs, ARIs, alcohol-related incidents, other things involving that, substance abuse, whatever you want to call it. And come to find out, he's doing that, telling these people how they could kill a family and telling them how big of a piece of shit they are, and I can't kick you out of the Navy for this, but if I could, I would, and all this. Well, come to find out, he ends up going to treatment for alcohol issues.
I see why you didn't say his name now.
And
Yeah.
he's punishing people, but you're coming in hungover.
Yeah.
Your YNs go around telling everybody, hey, like he's reeks of alcohol. Like when we go to his office to get paperwork, give him paperwork, they're reporting it to other people, and it's just like he gets to go to treatment, and no, it doesn't get taken any easier on anybody else that got punished, because I don't know the full legal aspect of it, but I know in things like that you can sometimes go back and appeal it because he might have not have been in the right state of mind
Yeah.
as he's handing out punishments. But sometimes how people can be hypocrites, even from COs on down, with, hey, I have this issue. I drive every morning, possibly still intoxicated from the night before, and I'm going to go into Mast and, punish somebody or hurt their career for somebody that they may have only done this one time and got caught. And I'm not condoning it, but there is people that make mistakes and they get the book thrown at them, and they made one mistake, but you drive every morning hungover to work, as a CO.
Yeah, and that's a weird spot to be in, because obviously he ended up coming out. I don't know, we don't know the full particulars of how that situation worked out. And I did an episode where a buddy of mine, he sought help for alcohol dependency and stuff. We talked to him, and so he got his help and he needed it. And same thing with the skipper, but the only difference is we don't know how that situation played out. And so what a lot of the times we assume is that, so this guy got treatment. Well, was that because he actually sought treatment, or was it because he got found out because all these yeomans are telling people, and that shit got brushed around the rug, like, oh, okay, well, hey, it's okay, we're gonna get you help. Whereas if it was a sailor and that shit got reported, your ass would get in trouble. So
Yeah, immediately. Like, you would be sent down to us in security. Even people that show up
yeah,
that are UA,
yeah,
which they could have just woken up late. They're sent down, and if the chain of command suspects something, they basically get a fit for full done on them.
Yep.
For being a little over 2 hours late, for work. But the CO walks in whenever, but since he has more responsibility, he can say, well, I had a meeting this morning, or I had this, that's why I'm coming in. Like, nobody's going to hit the CO or the UA charge.
Yeah.
But I understand people have their issues and people have to get treatment for certain things, and I'm not judging that part of it, but it's just hard to accept that this person is controlling your career and also talking down to you, which I get it. Granted, you messed up, but they're doing the same thing.
yeah,
It's just like the people that commit adultery, and let's say the chief, and they're sleeping with all their seamen, but as soon as he finds out you're also sleeping with one of those seamen, and you're let's say you're an E5, he's a E7, and he finds out that you also slept with one of the people he slept with, or that you're doing it outside of the command, even out in town, those people will still be like, well, you can't do that, and send you to Mast. But yet, not only is he not doing it out in town, or also doing it out in town, he's doing it in the workplace, but you chose to do it with someone out in town, he will still report you and say, I just found out one of my E5s, is he's married, he's sleeping with somebody out in town. The person that does it will also report you
yeah.
for doing it.
So before we get too far past this, I want to say something real quick. We were talking about alcohol issues and things like that. Please, if you have an alcohol problem, if you have a drug problem, anything like that is going on, and you are enlisted, reach out to your SARP, which is your substance abuse. Your substance abuse and rehabilitation program coordinator. Please reach out to them. Get the help that you need. Anything can happen in life. We all have issues. Reach out. Get the help that you need. You should find that at your local military treatment facility. So, but yeah, man. But what happens is that skipper, he may have got his treatment, but all those people beforehand that got wrapped up in that, and they got in trouble by the skipper, they're nobody's going to know about it. So like, or minimal people will know, so they can't even really take the time to reach out and try to appeal whatever happened, because
They won't even let them know.
right, exactly. So like, which is a big issue. Talked about this when I talked about the lieutenant commander, how he got picked up for sex trafficking. There's not enough transparency with things that go on. There are certain things that you can look up and you can find some information, but the actual, like, the higher ups in this situation, nobody is telling anybody, and that leads to doubt in the junior sailors and the enlisted folk.
Yeah, that's a tough spot to be in, because even though they don't put people's names out, like, there's boards you can walk by on the ship, in certain buildings on base, and you can see what basically incidents or what people have went to Mast for, even though their name's not attached to it. But it's still, everybody knows, especially on a ship. I mean, you see the people standing there in their whites getting ready for DRB and XOI and Captain's Mast, and you can figure out who did what.
Oh yeah, I mean, we're a small community. That shit flies all around.
Yeah, but when it comes to the CO or the triad or even a chief, a khaki level, across the board, it's like, oh, we don't talk about that here.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, why? Like, y'all use us as examples all the time, but y'all can't be viewed or look like you're human. Like you can make mistakes, and it's corrupt. So, and what I mean by that is not the entire Navy, not every CO, but there is places that become corrupt because they say, you have rights or you have avenues to travel during certain things. Well, just like if there was a judge out in town that was drunk or on drugs making decisions for people that broke the law, your case would most likely get completely thrown out or dropped or whatever. But because we're in the military and there's this ladder, well, when the CO gets caught up in something or in trouble by, let's say, the admiral, his boss,
Yeah.
well, nobody knows. One day you just look up, and it's funny because when it first happened, you ask people, like, where's the CO been? And everybody just says, oh, he's on leave.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, now it's been over a week or a week and a half or 2 weeks. How's the CO that's running the command? How's he on leave for that long? You don't see COs usually take leave that long. And so it's like you keep asking, and then when the excuses run out, it's like whispering from ear to ear, like, well, I heard this and I heard that. And then you got to work through it, and then you finally hear from a reputable enough source, like, well, he went to Portsmouth for a little bit. And it's like, oh.
Well, I mean, so like the medical stuff is one thing, right? Where you'd be like, it could have been as simple as like, hey, he's getting some medical treatment. You didn't have to go any further than that. But like,
yeah, but they try to cover it up so harshly, or they try so hard to cover it up that they throw out like this complete BS reason.
Oh yeah.
And then once they finally get caught, it's like, oh, well, you kind of figured out once you've been in for a while. It's like, well, he went to Portsmouth, and it's like, ooh, for what? Like, if he's been there that long. Now, if it started out that way, everybody would go, oh, okay, and they would put it out of their head and move on. But because you try so hard to cover it up, and then a slight piece comes out, and you're like, oh, it must be pretty serious if he's still there.
Well, like we got a pretty good example of that. Did you hear a few years ago about the ASECO that got caught on the ship? He got recorded having his well, it was him and another female officer, and she was giving him fellatio.
Yeah.
Well, like what happened with him is nobody actually knows what happened. He was there, and then he was gone. So nobody knows if he actually went to some form of Mast or like, officer review, or like, I don't know. But then he was there, and then he was gone, and nobody talked about it. And that stuff like that, like that's a big deal, and that kind of stuff needs to be addressed and be like, hey, this is what fucking happened.
Yeah, but they can't. For some reason, you can't make an example out of an E7 and above. Just like safe to say, one of my most favorite chiefs in the Navy. And I mean, I'm glad nothing happened to him, I guess, as you would put it. I mean, something happened, but in certain instances, I understand where what I'm getting at. I kind of jumped around a little bit, but once you reach a certain pay grade and time in and all that, if you do something, even if it's something that they could kick you out of the Navy with no benefits, no retirement, no nothing, once you reach a certain level of rank and a certain time in, they just force retire you. So
at 18 years, when you hit 18 years, that's in the U.S. code, like they have to let you retire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I've seen it though other ways, but this one in particular, he committed adultery, and he was at 20 whatever years, 22 years, and there was no punishment other than, I think it's time for you to leave a few months early.
Yeah.
Which in his case, I think what saved him was he was going to be retiring in, I think, May, August, or maybe he was retiring in March, and this happened like somewhere around the New Year time frame. So they were like, "Well, you're retiring in 3 months. Why don't you go ahead and kick rocks now?"
Yeah.
But there's other people. I'm more talking about the people that do. I guess I don't know how to compare it, but I guess they do something that if you were enlisted or you were below 18 years, like you would be kicked out with nothing, and it could even possibly affect your livelihood moving forward, even in the civilian.
Oh yeah, so like you could get something and it could be charged as a felony, and that shit will follow you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but still, the point I'm getting at is like, well, just because you've made khaki or put on khakis,
E7 and above.
now it's just like, oh well, why don't you just leave?
Yeah.
And it's like there's no lasting punishment.
Yep.
There's no nothing. Just
they get like and this is like what a lot of excuse people will give you is, oh, they get a black mark on their record, so they'll never advance anymore. Bitch, I don't give a shit about that, because you know what? If I as an E5 did that, oh yeah, if I as an E5 did that, not only would I lose rank, but there's a good chance I could get kicked out. But this guy, because he's E7 above or he's an officer or whatever, he gets a slap on the wrist and he gets to move the hell on.
Well, either that or they're just like, here's your retirement, go home.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, I guess that looks bad, but they try to paint this picture like, well, he wanted to stay in for 32 years and he's only been in for 26.
Yeah.
It's like, well, it doesn't matter. He still gets his retirement. He still gets to go kick back on the couch because he was a lieutenant commander, or he was this, or he was that, or he reached a high enough rank and time that he doesn't have to work again if he doesn't want to. And so it's like, what a punishment that is to not get to reach your 32-year goal.
Oh, no.
And just another example, the one time I did do, not the one time that sticks out that I did, Brig Chaser. He was a pilot. They went on a detachment or a deployment to Bahrain. He was a lieutenant. The female was a lieutenant commander. And this was a court-martial case. They went through court-martial, and they were trying to get him also for rape. It didn't meet everything that you have to have for that, but he got sexual assault. At the end of the day, that's what it boiled down to. Kind of a little bit of a rough case to listen to, but it was even more sick, I guess, to watch, his wife and his parents completely stick by his side and say, I know he didn't do this, even though they witnessed this lieutenant commander's story play out in front of them in the courtroom. They still, said, hey, we know he didn't do this.
That one is a really hard one in particular, man, because
I got something that'll make it even worse, but go ahead.
So like there's an epidemic in the military in general where, females, they make these claims, and even males, very few males come forward, but even in that situation, like very few of those cases actually make it through where the person gets charged. And that is a whole nother topic for another day, but it's so bad. Because like I've seen it too, where a guy got off and I was like, what the fuck? But I will say this, I don't know about you, but there has been, there's been an uptick in false reportings, and I'm not saying that that shit is, I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but I don't want to take away from anyone who was reporting that. I don't want to take away from that, because everyone experiences things in their own way, but there has been like people on social media that'll say like, oh yeah, just say this and like that'll get him fucked up, and like, you know, it's clear
Yeah.
that shit is out there, and it's hard to like really determine that, but like if the evidence is clear like that,
Yep.
you know, you should be convicted.
Well, and that's what I'm kind of getting at, because I normally don't talk about these cases because they are so difficult. Like, there's some girls that just have, I don't want to say a weak moment, but they have, you know, they go out drinking and they do this and they do that, and then they feel the need or want to sleep with somebody, but then, you know, once their drunken stupor is over, they're like, I shouldn't have slept with that person. And instead of just taking it as a lesson and moving on,
Yeah.
they are like, well, I'm so ashamed of sleeping with this person that I'm going to say that they did it and I didn't want it.
Yeah.
But back to this case, basically he, in a way, got caught red-handed, if you will.
Yeah.
Because he was basically, the quick version, to not get too graphic, is he was trying to touch her as she was sleeping,
Oh.
and she woke up and started yelling and screaming, and basically people ran in because they were like in a hotel.
Oh shit.
So they like ran in, or in a flat,
Yeah,
whatever, in Bahrain, and I mean he's like right there.
Yeah.
She's hysterical, and yeah, they did the whole medical
Yeah. The rape kit and
treatment.
stuff.
Yeah, and so with that, I was shocked that with all that, you still have his wife that's standing by him, his parents, and it's all said and done when we get to the sentencing for something like that, you know, and they say like officers are held to a higher standard and all this BS, right? All it boils down to at the end is he got a year confinement. And I believe with good behavior, he could be out in as little as 8 months. So I'm hearing all this for days on end. It was like 3-4 days long. We were in the courtroom. Certain things kept getting pushed off. And the worst part is we sat there, saw all this, saw most of the evidence, and heard most of the statements. And we had to ride in a van to the brig with this guy, and him telling us in a roundabout way how happy he is that it wasn't worse, and that he was going to be fine when he got out. Since he's a pilot, he had already started working at a place that trains pilots, and he's already been hired, and they're going to let him come back when he gets out of the brig. After we've heard all these eyewitnesses, and him just kind of to us being like, yeah, I'm not too worried about it. When I get out, I'll be fine. Like, man, no shame whatsoever that you still got convicted of sexual assault.
Yeah.
But yet you're telling all these junior people, you know, hey, it's not that bad. I'll be fine when I get out.
Yeah, it's like, and you see, and that's actually like, at least he got something. But I've seen situations where it's just like they listen to it, they go through the court martial, and the individual walks scot-free. And it's our system in the military. I can't speak on the civilian side, but I mean that's its own topic. Our system is flawed, and there's a lot of things that need to be corrected. And I would love to talk with someone like from the Army or from the Air Force, where they have like the provost marshal and they have like actual official like a legal thing, whereas with us, you know, we don't. I know we were talking about like the differences between how officers get treated and how enlisted get treated,
Yeah.
but there's still that difference with like an actual, you know, where it's not captain's mast, it's, you know, like a legal thing. Don't get me wrong, like you can still do like Article 15 in the Army and the other branches and stuff, but like I don't know exactly where I was going with that, but
it's just how inconsistent it is.
Yeah, and well, and that's part of the issues because coming back to the skippers, man, the skippers can do whatever they want. So if you were a skipper and I was a skipper, and this guy came up and he was like,
Well, there is parameters,
"Oh yeah,
but yes, they can. You're right. They can do whatever they want, but there is, hey, you can't go above this, or you can go really high on this one thing. Like if they give you, I think it's, unless it's changed, they could give you up to like 90 days restriction. But if they did that, you basically don't get any other punishment.
oh, okay,
So there is parameters, and they can say, hey, I'm going to hit you hard on this one thing and not take any money from you, or not take your rank, or not do this. But yes, they can hit you with max everything that they're allotted if they feel that that's what they want to do.
yeah." Now, yeah, and like you were saying, they can do that, but there is a the way they figure this out is they go through base legal. And so, like I was talking about earlier, when it comes to captain's mast, there's a legal process where base legal will write down their charges, all this stuff, look up the information, what's the max you can give them, what's the difference, X, Y, Z, all that stuff, and they will present that to the skipper. And so there's a folder with his charge, all the related information, whether there's any kind of, come on now, man, what are you doing over there?
Trying to silence this thing.
But there's the legal where they have this folder, and it has statements, it has the charge, the elements of the charge, the just everything that he would need. So which kind of brings us to something I know you had brought up briefly, was the legal side. So base legal is not there for you. Base legal
No.
is for the skipper. Base legal is for the command. So if you need something, that is not who you go to.
Yeah, you would want to find outside
Well,
legal advice, or legal at another base.
well, no. So it's not legal at another base. What it is, it's called the oh man, give me a second, I'll think of it. But it's basically, we have our own version of defense attorneys.
Yeah, we do, but you're still better off going to another base and asking them questions, because that's not your CO, and that's not the base legal that is for where you're at. So you're still better off going to another installation and talking to their legal team. Some places will tell you they don't handle that stuff. Go here, or whatever.
There are certain things that you want to go outside. So so what it's called for us is called Defense Service, or DSO, and that's for us. So I had to go to DSO for some stuff because I was fighting with some different things, and I had to reach out to them, and they gave me advice, and they helped me work through, and they reached out to the command and worked through some things. So you can go through them, and so I even talked to some JAG that was not attached to us. I talked to them on Facebook. And I found them through one of these groups, and I was talking to them about kind of my options. And they're like, "Listen, I can't really talk to you as an attorney, but having been a JAG and working for defense services, this is kind of what they will tell you, and this is some ideas of things that you can try to find and bring up with your attorney." So yeah, we do have defense legal services that we can use. But as far as the command one, if you call them and you try and talk to them about anything that might go against command policy, they're gonna be like, "No, I can't talk to you."
Yeah, and that's why I say another base legal may not be your best option, but it's better than going to your own base legal or your own command legal, because I have seen things where they don't necessarily lie or do it on purpose, but they are communicating with the accused how they're allowed to.
Yeah.
And they mess up and say something that they wasn't supposed to.
Basically breaking attorney-client privilege.
Yeah. And it's because they're there for the CO, and they didn't necessarily ask you, hey, did or did you not do this?
Yeah.
But the person's saying, hey, theoretically, if this happened, what are my options? And sometimes they're a little sneaky, and it works through, and then something comes up, and they are able to, whether it's right or wrong, they're still able to use that against you, because again, they're not there for you. People get that confused. They go to legal and they say, "Hey, I'm in a bind. This is what happened, and I think I'm about to go to Mast for this." And they're like, "Oh, yeah, you probably definitely are."
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, they came in seeking advice on this topic, and the CO can just say, "Well, they must have done it."
Yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, I would always recommend you can reach out to Defense Legal Services. You can Google that and you can find the one for your region. But always, I would, if it's in a bad enough situation, I would find if you're in a military town, there is going to be lawyers that are well versed in military law. Reach out to one of them. You'll probably have to pay a retainer and all that good stuff. But you know what? At the end of the day, a civilian lawyer is going to be 100 times better than a military lawyer, because military lawyers, while yes, if you go to Defense Legal Services, they're going to try and help you. They also have their interest in mind, where they are trying to potentially protect the Navy
Yeah.
or a fellow officer.
I would also caution, be careful of just going to any attorney out in town.
Oh yeah. Do your research.
I've seen that go bad as well, because they go to NJP and they're like, "My lawyer said not to say nothing." But some lawyers don't know that you don't have to have evidence for NJP. So make sure that they are well versed in legal proceedings in the military, because I've seen people get told some really bad advice, and they go in there and they have the guts to look at the skipper because they've had some legal person or lawyer tell them, "Hey, they can't do this to you," and they walk in there and they're like, "My lawyer says you can't do this to me. This is illegal." And then the CO kind of has an attitude like, "Oh yeah, watch this." And they say, "Well, that's fine. You don't have to say nothing. Here's your punishment. Have a nice day." And then they're confused while they're stuck on restriction for 45 days.
Yeah.
So make sure the lawyer knows how things work in the military.
Yeah. Yeah. So definitely check into that. Do your research. And also at any point in time, if you're in trouble, if you have a sailor that's in trouble or anything like that, get into the black and white, read the black and white, talk to, figure out all of your options, because at the end of the day, this, it's going to come down to you. And if you have something in black and white, you can fight that. And they don't let anyone in your chain of command tell you no, because, well, okay. They can tell you no about certain things, right? But I'm talking about when it comes to a legal perspective and doing things. So if there is something in black and white that says, "Hey, you can do this," and your chain of command says, "No, you cannot do that," call them on their bullshit, show them the instruction, and reach out to legal, reach out to Defense Legal Services. Don't reach out to base legal, or even a civilian legal, and get that shit worked out, because that can save your ass, and you have a lot more rights than what you realize.
Yeah, that is true. I've seen it save a lot of people. I've also seen it to where the person we mentioned earlier that showed, the text message, and the XO didn't care. They had more of their own evidence, and they had more of their own tactics that technically should have gotten them out of that. They chose to proceed anyway. The thing is, though, you still kind of have to roll with the punches, even if you are in the right. But what will save you most of the time is the appealing process after it is all said and done and over with. There's ways you can get your rank back. There's ways that it can come off your record through the appealing process. So our best advice is look up your charge, look up avenues, do your research, look up the appealing process, because there is time limits on certain things.
Yeah. So, and I know a lot of people think, oh, you can't sue the military, you can't sue the government. Yes, you can. That changed. I've been trying to find it here. I don't remember the exact date, but that changed a while back where you can now sue the military. There are certain situations where you can't, and there are certain situations in which you can. Uh, but don't let that be said that you cannot do that, because 100% you can. You just have to be in the right circumstance. So you have to look out for yourself. I don't know about you, but my whole career, I've been told it's your career. Nobody's going to care about it more than you do. So it's up to you to figure your shit out and find your own way.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I should have been a little more prepared for this one because there. Read the UCMJ. That's the best thing I could tell people is read the articles. There's articles where I know there's one. It's hard to find the one, and this is another. I'll touch on a little bit, but this is probably a topic for another time of how there's things in the military that they don't tell you, and it's like they do it on purpose. But there is articles where if you've been wronged by a superior, you can basically submit. It's a article, but there's a form attached to it.
Yeah, Defense Legal Services can give you that because they gave it to me.
Yeah, and you can submit it. There's one for officers and there's one for higher enlisted. And you submit this statement, and basically it gives them a certain amount of time to fix their wrongdoing. And if they don't, they're held accountable for that wrongdoing. So everybody kind of wants to fight everything verbally um, and try to get their point across that way. But if it calls for it, there is articles and there is forms that are on your side, basically. You just have to know where to look. And the best thing I can tell you is to look and read up on the UCMJ and, talk to defense attorneys, legal defense, and they can point you in the right direction for that.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of stuff out there. Just like in the civilian world, you have to know your rights. If you don't know your rights, you're going to get walked on. And I, it, me me being very into the black and white, it has saved my bacon a few times because I'm not going to be pushed over. I know what I can do and I know what I can't do, and I'm not going to let you tell me no, I can't do something that I'm allowed to do. It's my right, and I'm going to do it. And a lot of people will get pissed off about that because they say, "Oh, well, you joined the military, you signed your life away, yada yada yada." No, I joined to serve my country. I joined because I wanted to serve and do the right and do my time. That doesn't mean that I am just going to be a slave to the U.S. government. That's not how that works. You still are provided your rights. You still have these different avenues that you can go down. So don't let people take advantage of you.
Yeah, there's a time for, hey, this is the military. You don't have a choice. You have to do it. And then there's a time where it's like, okay, you're taking it too far now.
Yeah.
And I see that a lot. I see people, their chain of command wrongs them, and they're just like, well, they're in charge of me, so I have to listen. And it's like, if that's the way you want to look at it, sure.
Yeah. I'm not saying being a disrespectful shit, but
No. Yeah. I'm not saying that either. But there is. You still have to be. Yeah, there's still an appropriate way to be treated. There's an appropriate way for me to treat my seamen or third classes. There's an appropriate way for my chiefs or SECO to treat me, and vice versa.
Yep. I think we kind of covered everything on that one. What else you got wrote down over there? What do you got?
Conflict of interest. That kind of goes along with some of what we touched on. Back to our buddy's situation. It was his chief was the one conducting the investigation, and she was so basically, I will say this, it was a sexual harassment case, but she was going around and only getting statements from females, And on some of the statements that I actually saw with my own two eyes, were there was things changed on them, like dates and times. So this is a MAC who's not not only is doing something wrong by making it a conflict of interest, but also can't even do the basic things of her job, which is fill out a voluntary statement.
Yeah.
So, and then you go back because she had like 3, 4 statements, and they were all time stamped at the same time.
Yeah. And so this is important, and this kind of brings us back to request court martial, because in this situation, he went to Captain's Mast.
Yeah.
And the captain decided, nope, you're going to lose your rank. And, excuse me, the captain decided he's going to lose his rank, even though he had evidence proving otherwise. If that would have went to court martial, that should have
been thrown out.
Oh yeah, it would have been thrown out, and he'd probably be a chief or a senior chief by now. So that's why it's important to, if you have your ducks in a row, if you know some shit, or if you're innocent, don't fucking go to Captain's Mast. Request court martial.
Well, I don't think in his position he could have went to court martial. I don't think.
Yeah.
Which he did enough digging that he was like, well, this is wrong. Like this, he was so confident that it wasn't going to go anywhere. And then come to find out, not only did the chief have a conflict of interest, I wouldn't necessarily call it a conflict of interest for the CO, but come to find out, he was up for admiral.
Yeah.
And so he
Didn't want a black mark on his record if that came back.
Yep. So he went ahead, since it was a sexual harassment or tagged as that.
Yeah.
He proceeded with it because instead of standing up for a junior sailor and saying, well, y'all screwed this up, and I don't think he did it. It was like, well, what if the slight chance he did do it?
Yeah.
And it comes back and it prevents me. So there's things like that too, that when you look into it and you start doing your research and you're really trying to save yourself even after the fact,
Yeah.
You find these little things that it's like, well, this person was up for promotion, or he had screwed this up before.
Yeah.
And so he didn't want to screw up again, so he just punished me anyway.
Yeah. Now, I will say one thing you can do. Let's say you go to NJP for something and they take your rank away. What you can do is at your next command. I don't have the instruction pulled up in front of me. I don't remember all the information, but I know you have X amount of time after you leave that command, basically, or get a new skipper. You can file with the new skipper of the current. If they get a new skipper at the current command, or you go to your next command, you can appeal with them and say, hey, XYZ whatever, and you can ask for your rank back. And so I know 2 sailors who they had been in trouble over some stupid bullshit that they shouldn't have lost rank over, and they submitted a request with the skipper and with the new one, and they both got their rank back.
Yeah, you can also do it with the same skipper as well.
Yeah.
I didn't know about the new skipper, but again, find your avenues, read the timelines. I can't rattle off all the timelines of appealment processes.
Yeah.
But do your research, look into it. There is ways you can save yourself even after you've gone through an NJP process.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, got anything else? I think we hit a lot. You know what? Let's talk about excuse me. Let's talk about some interesting Captain's Mast. What's probably one of the most interesting Captain's Mast that you've been to, or at least that you've heard about?
I don't know about interesting. I have a dare I say, hilarious. So I was in DRB. I didn't witness. I don't recall witnessing his mass, but he did go to mass. The DRB though was hilarious, and you want to talk about watching some E7 and above, E7 to E9s get into it and start acting like children. This is the one. So it was around Halloween time. Don't remember the guy's rate, but he was a black guy. They had a Halloween party, and he decided it was a good idea to show up to this Halloween party dressed as a KKK member.
Oh my God!
And it was in I won't say where, but it was in a really rough area, and it turned out to end up being funny because they were reading off like witness statements, and they said there was people seen running from the party as he was walking up.
Oh shit! Go.
Yeah, but it's just one guy, wearing a Klan costume.
Why would you do that? Like,
I don't know. The guy had a great sense of humor from his point of view.
From his point of view.
Yeah, but it was... if you're able to let go of certain things that are going on in the world and you're able to look at it from a comedic point of view, and you can... if you put yourself in the room where I was, it was funny because you had every different standpoint that you could imagine. So you had... I'll split everybody up. So you have, let's say all the Chiefs were either black or white.
Yeah.
So on the black side, you had either let's split them. You either had that's not funny at all, and you had the people on that side that were like, that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
And then you go to the white side, and you had a handful that either maybe grew up around a bunch of black population, or they had a lot of friends, and they were like, that's not funny either. And then you had the rest of the white Chiefs in the room that were like, that's kind of funny. I understand what he was trying to do there. Yeah. Like, that's funny. So that was funny to watch and play out because they did some of his stuff, gave him a hard time, and kicked him out of the room, back out into the hallway. And they're going back and forth. And, you have people that... some of the black people were like, that's not funny, everything we went through and all that, which I get that. I'm not trying to harp or say that that's not true. But then you had some of the brave, let's say, white Chiefs that were like, that's fucking funny, and they're going back and forth. They're like, he was trying to do, like on the Chappelle show, blah, blah, blah. And so, but they're arguing, and then you have like, some of the black people that thought it was funny, they're kind of the mediators between some of the white people that spoke up and the infuriated, black Chiefs. And so it was just hilarious to watch that play out. And then how to see the flip from when he comes back into the room to when he's not. Because, of course, nobody was really on his side, even the people that didn't see it as a big deal. But you had some passionate people that were like, hey boy, think about your heritage, and them, you see kind of like his own people, if you will, like turned against him. Yeah. And was like, you don't need to be doing that. What's wrong with you? After everything we went through, which I understand that point of view. But some of those people kept that same energy when he was out of the room, and you could see, some of the black people were like, it's not that big of a deal. And they're like getting offended at each other too. Yeah. And then you had like the white side that some of them, you could tell were, they really believed it wasn't funny. And then you could tell some of them were just playing a role of like, I'm not going to speak out. I'm going to act like I'm mad too. And then you had some people that were like, yeah, that's pretty fucking funny.
Well, that kind of brings up too, like a weird thing about the Chiefs mess in general. The Chiefs, like you were...
It's like E3 and below.
Well,
just at their level.
Yeah. But also as a chief, you're supposed to support your other chiefs. So like, you may not agree. You may be like, "Oh shit, yeah, that was funny," and this other chief's like, "No, that's fucking outrageous." You have to sit there and be like, "Oh, that was fucked up. You should have done that," even though you don't agree.
Yeah. Well, most of the time you just see them not say anything.
No, yeah.
They don't agree or disagree.
That's
once they're back in the room.
yeah. That's so funny though. Like, what in the fuck were you thinking? Like, of all the times to dress up as the KKK. Yep, this event. I just like that's.
I don't know. I guess he thought there wasn't gonna be. Well, I don't think there was. I guess he thought it was okay because there wasn't a very senior presence at this party. So I guess he thought it was gonna be everybody was gonna be like, ha ha ha, that's funny, good one. But there was people that were like legitimately scared running from the party, and it was hard to keep my composure when they're reading that off and they're like, there was people seen running from the location, and it's like, it's like it's one guy. Yeah, it's one guy.
Well, I'm surprised he didn't get his fucking ass beat.
Well, that was the other thing that they, again, I won't say where, but it was a real rough city.
Yeah.
And that was their other point, was like, aside from us not agreeing with you, like, you're in a predominantly poor black neighborhood. Being black yourself doesn't necessarily mean that's going to save you.
Yeah.
Like, you're in a predominantly black neighborhood, and it's not like you drove there and you got out, walked down the sidewalk, right? Which I'm sure he still would have been in trouble.
Right.
But it's like he walked. Jeez. He was walking through this neighborhood in a, KKK get up, and they were like, what if somebody, hurt you or shot you or whatever? Which I definitely see that point of view.
Can you imagine that headline? U.S. Navy sailor dressed as KKK gets shot in X location.
Yeah.
What?
And he was black himself.
Yeah, well, it would have read, black U.S. Navy sailor dressed as KKK gets shot.
Yeah. I don't know. I know people are going to have mixed feelings about that one, but if you were to ask me what's like the most outlandish, that's it. I had another one where the guy is a gay guy, and he ended up punching one of his female friends in the face.
Oh, shit.
At a club.
Fuck.
And he got in trouble for that. He had a weird standpoint because I watched the same guy go to Mast like 2 or 3 times, and he punched this girl in the face, and it was like, well, I'm gay, it's okay. Just like they were in ranks one morning. Somebody said something to him, and he was like, suck my dick. And he said it to a female, and they reported him. He went up for it.
Yeah.
And he said, well, it's okay, I can say that I'm gay. And they're like, no, you can't. Like,
no.
What do you think? It's still sexual harassment. Like, you're telling somebody to conduct that act on you.
Yeah.
And he's like, but I don't like girls, so it's okay. Like,
no.
And he could not let go of the fact that, like, it's okay. Or it's not okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
He couldn't change his mind to...
Yeah. So I've got Reddit pulled up here, and I've got a funny one that somebody's talking about, but also kind of a cautionary tale. So I'm just gonna read it. So this guy says, had a dude on this board brag about making edibles in the barracks and smoking weed in Bahrain, all after he had already hot popped on urinalysis. Had posts asking where to buy spice in Tokyo. The Jag told me it would be impossible to tie his Reddit account to him until I showed her a picture in his post history of his last name tattooed on his chest. Jag had me photograph his tattoos in person, and that's all she wrote. Went to NJP again and got admin separated. So not only was this guy stupid enough to brag about making edibles, but he popped on the urinalysis, and then he was posting on Reddit asking about like where to buy spice in Tokyo and shit like that. Somebody found his Reddit account, looked through his fucking pictures, and found proof. So don't be a dumbass and post on fucking Reddit or Facebook or any of this other shit saying dumb shit and get yourself in trouble, especially if you have like pictures of who you are. God. So, I had whenever I was in SIG, I had this guy go up. So this guy, I think I told you the story, but this guy, he brought I think she was a stripper or a hooker or something. He brought her onto base, and he lived in the barracks, and he went to the barracks. They were in there all night, and I talked to him and I asked him, I was like, dude, what the fuck happened? And he was like, well, I brought her in. We went to my room. We were having sex all night. We decided to take a break, and we went out to the smoke pit. Now, the barracks there, they were like a U shape, and the smoke pit was in the middle. So he was in the middle of the barracks outside. I guess you call it the courtyard. And he went out there to have a cigarette. Well, for starters, he shouldn't have had her in his room past hours. And if she was a hooker, well, that's another whole scenario. So yeah. Anyways, he goes out the smoke pit. He's out there smoking. She comes out to join him. They're smoking, and then she starts sucking his cock. And like, he was telling me about it, and most of the people in the world would be like, "Yo, good for you, guy," and but I think it was like 4 a.m. right? So there's nobody out. It's dead outside. It's dark. They're alone. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, whatever, you're alone. I guess you shouldn't have done that, but at least you weren't doing it like in front of people, right? Well, then they go back into the room. They finish up their night, do their thing, whatever. Well, I don't know how he got caught, but apparently somebody fucking saw him, reported him, and the skipper was like, oh, we're going to have open captain's mast. So they had everybody out there, and they were just going in on him. But like, what? Come on, man! Like, why would you do that?
It's funny to find out like where people decide to do stuff. Like, for instance, this person didn't get in trouble, but I was on shore duty, and we're patrolling, and we had a fairly new first class check-in, and we were riding together, and so I'm showing him some tricks, and he's driving, I'm in the passenger seat, and I was like, hey, turn down here, but when you do, turn the lights off, the headlights, and just follow the road, with ambient light, the moonlight, whatever. And there's a little parking lot, like a 3-4 row parking lot or spaces to your left. So we're cruising down, just rolling, and he kind of knew where it was. And so when he got there, he turns to the left real quick, flips on the lights, and there's a minivan sitting there. And I'm like, oh, yep, got him. Already knew. So I hop out, and as I'm getting out, this guy hit the wrong button. And it was one of those vans where you could hit the button and like all the doors open, the hatch opens, all the lights come on. So he freaks out, hits the wrong button. Everything starts opening. I come out, turn on my flashlight, and later we found out it's his wife. She's sitting there, backs to me. She's got her head down in her hands, mortified. He's freaking out, and we're kind of giving him a hard time. Well, it turns out the dude's a chief. And so this first class I'm with is like, chief? Like, what are you doing out here? And so, come to find out, he's like, my mother-in-law's in town. And we're like, okay, and he's like, well, we live in the RV park.
Oh, my God.
So they live in an RV, a big one at that, but they live in an RV. And so he's like, we need a little more privacy than that. So, we come out here. And it's kind of funny because they leave. We give them a hard time. We're like, go take care of business, somewhere else. Yeah. So they leave. Well, he was a real funny guy, my first class, and he's like, let's go to the gate and wait for him to come back and give him a hard time again. So I'm like, okay. Well, I'm standing up there. I didn't realize at the time because I'd never seen her husband, but I've had several conversations with his wife.
Yeah.
And so they come through the gate, and I see her, and I'm like, oh, hey, I know you. And she's like, oh. I'm like, you're the one that's always telling me how you never get any sleep. And this first class without missing a beat looks over and he nudges me. He's like, well, now we know why. And we start laughing. This chief's like, okay, we're leaving. So they leave. But that's a non-mass, I guess, funny story that we've come across.
Yeah. So, well, the guy that I was telling you about, well, then when he went up, the skipper ended up kicking him out, and he went back home. And I was like, what a dumb thing to get kicked out for. But so to go along with your story, we had a chief. His son one night got caught over behind the kennels. Why in the fuck of all the places you would go on base, you would park behind the kennels? Because the kennels, so if you're standing at the main gate and you're looking, if you're just standing at the door looking out, you're actually looking at the kennels, and then to the right is the direction the road runs.
Yeah.
So you look out and you see the kennels, and then you can see behind the kennels. Well, this motherfucker parked behind the kennels, and so we didn't know who it was. We just saw a car behind the kennels. And we're like, hey, let's get a unit over there, go check it out. Roll up. It's the fucking chief's son and his girlfriend in the back seat, fucking going at it.
Was it an MAC son?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
And so we call him up, and oh boy, when he showed up, woo! Needless to say, he took care of that, and we didn't see his son for quite a while. So yeah, it was not a mass story, but I don't want to tell that story. That's.
Oh, I got it's not a mass story either, but I guess another subtopic we can touch on is how people are with their chain of command. So we talked about at mass how the chain of command will flip the script on people. Well, obviously I'm there when people get picked up.
Yeah.
So it's funny what I can't say I've seen a sober person do it, but I've seen people that had some issues that wasn't necessarily intoxicated do it. But it's just funny that how they're in trouble, but how brave they are while they're in trouble. And even when you tell people, when they're a little bit too big for their britches and they're sitting there talking smack, and you're like, well, your chief or so-and-so, Gunny, whoever, is going to come pick you up. So keep that same energy. And they're like, I don't give a fuck. Fuck him too. And they're just going off.
Yeah.
And they're even taking it further and telling you how, they don't care. They'll say whatever to this person. And then it comes that time for them to show up and to see the change. So good friend of mine in Kings Bay had there's a lot of Marines on that base.
Yeah.
They had a Marine around the New Year. Found him passed out in a car, and so they went to wake him up. He was drunk. Car was running. And my buddy had inmate 1 with him. I think he was still second class at the time. That don't really matter, but had the first class watch commander with him. Woke the guy up, start talking to him. Well, the first class happened to be black. So this guy looks at him, drops full on N-word on him, and goes to swing. Well, the friend of mine was a state champion wrestler. And as soon as his arm went up, he grabbed him, hip tossed him, throws him on the ground, separates the dude's shoulder.
Oh, fuck.
Because the guy was still fighting back as he grabbed him. It's not like he did something crazy and yanked his shoulder out, but hip toss, threw him on the ground. They get him back to the precinct, and he's still just going at it with them. And he's like, you better calm down before your gunny comes in here. And that's the one I was kind of referring to. Screw him. I don't care. He doesn't bother me, this, that, and the third. Well, then old boy walks in. And usually when people are that irate, it's not like we're trying to make it worse for them or snitch on them or whatever, but we kind of, I mean, you know this, we give their chain of command, whoever representative, like a heads up, like, hey, this is what they've said, this is what they did,
Yeah.
whatever, give them the rundown. Well, his gunny's like, oh yeah, oh okay. And, you know, and it's part of the job. It may be a little bit wrong, but sometimes we add a little bit extra. Not lies, but we add a little more info than what we necessarily have to tell them. You know, well, he said this about you. So that's kind of what they did.
Yeah.
And my buddy's like, hey, just so you know, with the scuffle, like, I heard his shoulder pop, like it's separated. And he's like, I don't give a fuck about his shoulder. And he's like, okay, I just got to let you know. Yeah, that guy got taken back to the wood line when he got picked up. And,
I bet he did.
Yeah, he got handled. And then I think he got to go to the hospital after that.
Yeah.
But he was mighty shocked. I guess he thought they were lying to him the whole time.
Yeah.
About his gunny coming in. Well, when he walked in, he was mighty surprised.
Yeah, I bet. Well, hey man, I think this has been a great first episode, and I look forward to us talking more. So for the rest of you guys, hey, if you want to check us out, we're on Twitter, we're podcasts right everywhere you can find us, Facebook. Hit us up, let us know if you want to come on, and we'll see you next time. And hopefully my new co-host will be with us. See you.